Hello everyone, this is Jotto, bringing you the Hearthstone Weekly, talking about the top decks, talking about the top cards, and the state of the metagame for this week's tournament. Now before we start, I've got a couple of announcements to make. First of all, most importantly, about the video I made as far as where the weekly shows are going. If I gave the wrong impression about that, saying that I'm sick and tired of doing this, it's not really the case. There's a couple of reasons why I'm switching. There's a couple of very important reasons why I'm switching that I won't go into right now. But the main reason for me to think about is I'm still going to be doing my tournament reviews and things, but the weekly shows originally were not designed to be like this. They were designed to be talking about the metagame and a analytical overview of the metagame and something like that, and so I'm really trying to develop into that as opposed to a tournament recap, which is what it is currently. So I'm not gonna be transitioning immediately. It's gonna be a slow transition, but this weekend on Saturday at 2 p.m. GMT, so that's UK time, I'm going to be streaming the second episode of my attempt at getting the format I tried last week out to work. I'm using different software now. There should be less frame rate issues, should be much cleaner, things like that. Now, this week, I'm going to give you guys an option, and if no one gives me any votes or anything, I'll just pick one. But I'm going to be reviewing, well, sort of reviewing, I'm going to be breaking down one of the quarterfinal best of threes from BlizzCon. Quarterfinal, keep in mind, because those are the ones that people have been paying less attention to. So, in the comments section, go ahead and tell me which one of those best of threes you'd like to see. I've got four options. There's Husky and Trump, Noxious and Artosis, Crip and Hafu, and Wreckful and Day 9. Those are the four different matchups. I'll take the most popular one and I'll do that on Saturday. And if it's an even, no, if it's a tie between several ones, then I'll choose one out of the most popular. But anyway, so I'm going to be streaming the actual episode at 2 p.m. GMT on Saturday. But anyway, let's get started with the actual weekly, shall we? So, 3 decks from NA. We had first place Fjord playing Warlock Aggro. Second place Kisstafer playing Warlock Aggro. I'll comment on that later. Third place LuigEzz playing Rogue Cantrip Aggro. So we see Kisstafer and LuigEzz making it up to top 3 and 4 again, which is, it's nice to see some consistent players coming out again. Anyway, on to Fjord's Warlock Aggro deck. Now, as usual with Warlock Aggro, I'm just going to talk about the differences. So, first difference, Leroy Jenkins. This is a card which I could not understand why it wasn't in Warlock Aggro up until now. It's an incredibly powerful charge minion. It's a fireball on a stick, helps out a lot with burst damage. Very, very nice out. But the main thing I'm going to be talking about is the sideboard, because he did provide his idea for a sideboard. Now, if you look at all of those sideboard options, they're all anti-aggro. Like all of them. Like, apart from LuigEzz. LuigEzz is very good on top deck war against aggro, but he shines against control decks. Because unless they're playing Mage control, so the Mage burn deck, he just comes down and wins the game with his hero power. But the main problem with LuigEzz makes him very difficult to main deck at the moment is the fact that he's not very good against aggro because the game's over by that end, and he's not very good against combo. So he's not an amazing card at the moment. He does have his place though, and that's why he's in the sideboard. The rest of the stuff though is Fairy Dragons, which really help out against control mid-range decks, and a lot of healing cards in Voodoo Doctor, Earthring Farseer, and Darkscale. These are very good anti-aggro cards and anti-combo cards. You keep yourself healed up as you're life tapping. It's a good way of sustaining yourself against combo, but you still need to life tap to get them down as fast as possible. Last thing to really comment on is the Void Terror and Sen'jin. Now, both of these stop aggro quite well. Not many aggro decks play silences, so Void Terror can get very, very large and just take out several minions and get you right back in the race and just win the game for you. Sentient Shieldmaster just stops them from attacking for a turn while you swing back at them. It's a very good sort of... If there's a race in damage, Sentient wins the race. That's why it's good in this kind of deck. So, Kisstafer. Now, Kisstafer played a weird Warlock deck last week, and he's playing a weird Warlock deck this week. So, it's aggro, still aggro, but the ones I want to talk about is the fact that this is a more defensive aggro deck. Things like Blood Knight, which, while it can trigger off the Argent Squire and Argent Commanders, it also triggers off your opponent's Argent Squires and Argent Commanders. And even things like Scarlet Crusaders. It triggers off all of this, you get a 3 mana 6/6. And if your opponent goes turn 1 Argent Squire and you're going second, then yeah, have fun with the turn 2 6/6. Generally a good way of doing things. You can also do it with your own Argent Squire if they don't ping it. The other things to talk about are Stampede and Kodo, which helps a lot in the mirror, same with Senjin. Helps a lot against Cantrip minions especially, and against things like Blood Imp. Sylvanas is already in the deck, always nice to see. Very, very powerful legendary. One of the strongest in the game, in my opinion. Along with Blood Mage Thalnos, is one of the strongest legendaries in the game. I would suggest playing it in pretty much every deck. Last thing to talk about is Deathwing. Now, Deathwing is a card that's mocked a lot, but Deathwing actually does have its uses. In aggro, discarding your hand is not a problem. I mean, you're discarding one card probably that you're going to life tap anyway. And Deathwing destroys all of their creatures. So if they're on the swing back and they're about to kill you next turn, you just drop Deathwing, they have to remove it, and not many decks are playing hard removal at the moment, so they have to deal with that Deathwing, and it's going to be extremely difficult to deal with. So, on to LuigEzz, who's playing a rogue Cantrip aggro deck, which is a deck that revolves around drawing as many cards as possible and grinding your opponent out with aggro minions. Now, this variation is playing Argent Squire because it has several buffs, so you can buff up Argent Squire along with your Novice Engineers and Defias Ringleader, which puts on some extra pressure. SI7 is always an incredible utility outlet, along with the obligatory Sylvanas and Defender of Argus, Dark Iron Dwarf, and Shattered Sun Cleric combination. Argent Commander always makes his obligatory appearance. Now, the spells, Betrayal is becoming a bit more popular. Now, the reason Betrayal is becoming a bit more popular is twofold. One, if they buff a minion and you Betrayal the buffed minion, it kills whatever buffed it. And two, Blood Imp. Betrayal kills Blood Imp, which is a very, very, very useful thing. It kills any buffed Blood Imp, so you can buff up your Blood Imp and then play a second Blood Imp and it will still die to a Betrayal. So, onto the top 3 decks from EU. We have St-Ostkaka. These names, man. These freaking names. We have Fenomen and rd-edurus. And the winner for the weirdest name. Anyway, moving on. 3 aggro decks again. 6 aggro decks this week. Yeah, a lot of aggro. Some mid-range, but yeah, this week a lot of aggro. Anyway, so moving on to the Warlock aggro deck from St-Ostkaka. It's the same as the last one, so I'm just going to move on. This one does play Ventricle Mercenary instead of Sylvanas. Ventricle Mercenary is a good substitution, by the way, if you don't have a Sylvanas. It has the similar sort of I must kill it effect. And the downside doesn't really count as a downside in a deck that's playing mostly 4 and below drops. Now, second place, Fenomen, Mage Aggro. Now, this is a deck which occasionally makes an appearance. It's a very solid deck. It can do well. It has been seen to do well in the past. So, as a basic rundown, this was the original buff deck that Moon came up with a while ago, which sort of caused a increase in Shattered Sun Cleric play and Dark Iron Dwarf and things like that. Now, this one isn't playing Dark Iron, it's playing Defender of Argus, and it's playing things like Harvest Golem and a Mani Berserker, because you can enrage your own Mani Berserker with your hero power. It's also playing some Leper Gnomes to give it some increased speed. And the spells is what's interesting about this variation. 1 Arcane Missiles buffs up your Mana Worm sometimes, kills Blood Imps, things like that. Frostbolt's obligatory, but Cone of Cold, Blizzard, and Flame Strike. This does not like dying to aggro. This deck will not die to aggro. It's playing so much AoE, just gets rid of all that aggro. And why are you playing so much AoE? Because you have a lot of burn in this deck. Double Pyroblast, double Fireball, double Frostbolt. That is a lot of burn. You'll be killing people extremely quickly in the late game with this deck. On to third place, rd-edurus, Paladin Aggro, another deck that sort of comes up every so often that we haven't seen recently. But this variation is playing double ooze because you lose to weapons a lot while playing Paladin Aggro. It's still playing the standard Sword of Justice True Silver. The interesting thing about this deck is, one, the sheer lack of spells, only 4, and 2, the fact that it's playing 1 sword and 2 Shoutouts on clerics as opposed to 2 swords and 1 Shoutouts on cleric. This is mainly because cleric helps a lot with curving, whereas Sword of Justice is sort of a skip turn, even though it is more powerful as an effect giver. It's less powerful on curve, and you really do need curve. Aldor Peacekeeper helps shut down big stuff. Big Game Hunter, I always make a typo. This time it's Big Game Junter. One of these days I'm not going to make a typo. Anyway, moving on. Still playing the obligatory buff minions in Dark Iron and Defender of Argus. But the interesting twist about this deck is the fact that it's an aggro deck with a late game. Tirion Fordring, Ysera, Ragnaros, Sylvanas Windrunner, and Big Game Hunter. Or Big Game Junter. Anyway, most of these cards will be played in control decks. However, those cards are designed to finish a game which you're already winning through aggro. You've just run out of steam. You need a finisher. What do you get? An Ashbringer of Tirion Fordring, or 8 damage of Ragnaros, or a Ysera Awakens. Things like that. These are very big finishing moves that help out a lot, especially with the lack of hard removal in the metagame right now. A lot of these aggro decks are starting to play bigger and bigger things that cost more because they can get away with it. Alright, on to the state of the metagame for the last 5 weeks. Now, I've talked about pretty much all the cards I can at this point for the current metagame. It's a bit stale, they haven't released a patch in a while, so I thought I'd talk about a certain deck, also known as Warlocks. Now, on NA this has become a bit of a plague, but on EU, weirdly enough, it's only started this week, where this week, Warlock Aggro got first place for the first time in a very long time on EU. It's finally started to move over the ocean, it's starting to get up there. We saw 2 of these a couple of weeks ago in 3 and 4th place, but now we have our first place on EU for Warlock Aggro. However, if you look on the NA side of things, it's rather ugly. We have 4 in a row, I might add, out of the last 5 winners have been Warlock. That's a problem. Second place, 3 out of 5. Most of those have been Warlock mirrors in the finals, by the way. And then 3 to 4th place, we're seeing 4 out of 10, but that's an absurd percentage for 1st and 2nd place. That's something which doesn't happen. Normally, it really doesn't happen. We've seen Mage Aggro do that for a few weeks. We had Cantrip Rogue on EU take 2 wins in a row, never 4. That hasn't happened for a very long time in tournaments, and it usually gives you a bit of an eye raiser when it comes to Warlocks and their actual balance. I'm actually going to go there in this case because we're coming up to a patch at some point. Like, they have to release a patch at some point with open beta coming out soon. So one of the things they have to deal with is the fact that the buff minions are incredibly powerful, and Warlock's early minions cost 1 less mana than they should. Flame Imp having 2 damage to you is not really a negative thing in an aggro deck. Voidwalker is very powerful, Blood Imp very powerful. Soulfire is a free burn spell, essentially. So you're facing a rather interesting situation where they had a powerful aggro anyway, but with all the buff minions being so good, and the fact that they have life tap, they take advantage of the current metagame better than any other class by far. So you have Warlock Aggro has turned into the most consistent, most powerful in terms of sheer sort of ability to break through taunt minions. And it kills you the fastest out of any aggro deck, and it's becoming a bit of a problem when one class does a certain archetype the best without any dispute. The only thing they are kind of second to is Mage in terms of burst damage, but even then they can contend fairly well if you throw in a Leroy Jenkins, Power Overwhelming, things like that. They're a very, very absurd class at the moment, and I'm expecting them to get changed further down the line. But anyway, as for now, if you like the content, please subscribe. As I said, if you want to see a certain match on the sort of part 2 of the weekly, I guess, on Saturday, then say it in the comment section. Be nice to see what people actually want to see out of the quarterfinals. I'll repeat, it's 4 different quarterfinals. There's Rekful versus Day 9, Griparian versus Hafu. Wow, that was blank. Yeah, Griparian versus Hafu, Noxious versus Artosis, and Husky versus Trump. If you want to see one of those games and want to see me talk about one, then put it in the comment section. I'll be paying attention to those, and I'll live stream the show at 2 p.m. GMT on Saturday, and then I'll upload it on YouTube once I've done the actual stream. But anyway, as for now, this has been Jotto, signing off.